Ready?
Oh, what is...
Oh, sorry.
No,
You're good.
Everything can be taken out, so don't, freak out.
Should I
Keep that in.
Great. I'm going to have to don't put that in.
Hey, no notes.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the 7 Things You Are Doing That Are Ruining Your 20s podcast. I'm Gianna.
I'm Lacey.
I'm Selena.
And, that's the end, isn't it? Did we do that in the beginning? Whatever.
Yeah, I think we say, and then you say... No, I think we do that.
Okay. We have a very special episode. I have my inspiration, my best friend.
Gianna, I'm right here. I can hear you. Oh, it's not
Selena.
You're right. I met her like 5 minutes ago, and she's like my inspiration.
So just to review, we're going to be having episodes 1 through 7, which will be the different ages in between our ages, which is 21 and
Not
29.
21.
This episode is our 24-year-old, which is Selena. Our third episode is going to be about fear of mistakes, failure, and settling. Anything else you want to add on that?
Change? I think we're talking about change.
Yeah. Afraid of change. I think that you're an awesome person to talk to about this because talk about change. Like, this girl has been to California, New York, Chicago.
I don't think you're afraid of change at all, really.
Can you just tell us why you did choose this topic and give us a little background?
You know, this topic kind of struck me in both a personal and a universal standpoint, I think because fear is a universal emotion, and I think everyone goes through fear at some point. And I think your 20s, it being such a monumental decade in one's young life, I think fear kind of catapults and takes the reins a little bit growing up, especially in this time and age. Mm-hmm. You know, like we mentioned, we're going to be talking about mistakes and change and settling and failure, and I feel like those are heightened. I think that fear is a really pivotal part in it, as much as people don't like to admit. I think everyone has a fear, and I think that the ones that we are going to talk about today are going to be pretty crucial in our lives and our standpoint right now.
Well, I'm curious because we talked about fear of change is one of the things that people fear. And it sounds like from, the little that G's mentioned about moving around, I mean, that's a little bit more typical kind of in the millennial generation of kind of moving job every 2 or 3 years. But for some people, that's a huge change to move across the country. So how is that something, I mean, you had to confront that fear. How did you do it?
Right. I think in change, I think it's scary, very scary, to just uproot your life and move for a job or for college, which is kind of the route I decided to take. And I think that in doing it at such a young age, I moved out when I was 18 from California to Chicago. And not to say I didn't cry or I didn't have that homesick feeling, but I started using that fear as a drive to push me. And I got settled. Gianna's met my college friends I've made out here have been great. And I had a plan to move to New York after doing 2 years in Chicago because I wanted to get more experience. And what a time to live in New York, being that my age and going to school there. I felt so blessed to do that. But I got settled, too. I got settled, and my friends, we all lived in the same building in the South Loop in Chicago, and fear kind of struck again because I was like, oh my goodness, like I applied, I got in, I had this plan in my head to move, and now I've made all these great connections that I don't have to leave behind. And again, you have to use that fear to push you to greater things, which I had a great experience in New York, and it was so much fun, and I think having a really strong family foundation behind me helped me. And I think that part of becoming an adult is kind of knowing that you can jump and you can fall and it's going to be okay. And I think it was the time and age to do it. But change is hard.
For sure. And that's interesting because I think most people think in their 20s now that they need to have it all together. Like you talked about, like, running after something, you're going to fall, you're going to mess up, and you might realize I've been running in the wrong direction.
Which I did. Yeah.
And I think most people don't I think the mindset, most people don't think that. They don't think they can make a mistake. Otherwise it's like a loss of time, a loss of effort. But really those things probably that time when you realize you're going in the wrong direction is what made you realize, okay, I need to recalculate, and I know now what direction to go into.
And I think a common mistake that a lot of 20-year-olds make is, like, they realize, oh, I've gone in the wrong direction, and instead of that being like, I'm scared of keeping going in this direction, what they do is, I'm scared of getting out of this. And so they just stay in it, and they just, like, keep going and later regret it.
Right, which resorts back to settling. This idea of settling and this idea of being content in a place where you just got stuck, honestly. And I think achieving something greater should just be the pull in everybody's kind of mindset.
I'm such a 6 because that scares me to death.
Yeah. So do you know, we're going to talk about this in every podcast.
I know, right?
Do you know about the Enneagram?
It's like a personality test.
Oh!
For a 6, though, it's a little bit more like a pessimist. A little bit more of like, I kind of always see the worst case scenario type thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you talk about like that fear driving you to go and to achieve because of all the great things that you could achieve, for me, I think like there's a huge chance of failure. So the settling is that much more like pulling. Is there anything that you could pinpoint that you're like, this is how I'm able to, fear is controlling, but you talk about using it as a motivator. Is there anything you can pinpoint that? That's
really
hard,
good
right?
question. Because I've had this mentality for a while. And I think the sliver of doubt I have in myself, I kind of push away because I have failed.
What?
I liked what you said in, the fear and that kind of resorting back into settling, which then resorts back into change, which then kind of mimics around and you trying not the fear of making mistakes. And it's all kind of intertwined in this sad cycle that happens, but the whole point of it is to just keep it cycling. Because I think that you have fear at the base point, and let's say, for example, you're scared of failing, which you mentioned. You're scared of failing. Okay, so let's move. Okay, if we can move past that. Okay, you did it. Great. Now you've settled. Now you're settling. Okay, now I'm settling, but now you know it's time to change. And then you come back up and it's time to change. And I think it's this continuous cycle where it all works together. But I think for kids our age get stuck in one of them. Fear propelling it. But I feel like we get stuck in one of the three.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I was going to actually say, like, you were saying it's a universal feeling, and we have all felt it, but each one of us, it's different. Like, for you, it's fear of change. For me, I'm so scared of settling. So what I do to combat that, change. Like, I'm always going.
Right.
Monkey brain. And that's my poison.
It's funny because that cycle makes perfect sense how you described it. But in my mind, before you mentioned about like using one to propel another, I was like, I have to break the cycle.
Right.
I have to get out of that. But it's interesting how you're kind of using each one kind of at against each other to propel you into the next one.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that, so that's really interesting.
Or even like as a learning experience, the tale-old quote, learn from your mistakes.
Right.
They allow you to grow, which allows you to change, which allows you...
crap.
Our generation is very open as well in some of the mistakes that we make, and I would hope one can learn from them, but I think in doing things like this and educating people and just having like good friends around, I may not have made the same mistakes as Gianna did, but I can learn from the ones that she's made and vice versa for you and I. Learning from mistakes, I think nobody has it together. Especially our generation, this age bracket we're going through.
Especially Gianna.
It's interesting you mentioned that because you'd also mentioned too like a strong family foundation, and then you talked about sounds like some pretty close good friends in college.
You're right.
And our last couple episodes were about just having the right kind of people around you, and really kind of learning to manage just people's negative, maybe inaccurate perspectives of you, as opposed to people that like you value their opinion of you and managing their perspective of you. So it's interesting that you mentioned that because it sounds like that's kind of foundational to even how your mindset is to, I'm going to go after this, there's that sliver of doubt, but I'm going to overcome this idea of fear and all the possibilities that could go wrong. But it seems like, I feel like that's kind of like you're jumping from that foundation of having like a strong family
right.
and good friends.
Well, I was just, talking to Gianna before we came out here, and, we have groups of friends. And I wouldn't say, like, there's, like, negative influences per se, but I would say that our friends can serve a purpose for yourself. So I was telling her, I have my lifers, right? My people who have been with me since middle school, I've known for 10 plus years. They're always going to be there. I could not talk to them for a few months, pick up a phone, and they're good.
Yeah.
I have my college friends. Everyone's made some college friends or young in this age friends. They're great to go out with. They knew how horrible it was studying for midterms, and we pulled the all-nighters, and we had our crazy nights. And there's that group of friends. And then I was telling Gianna, it's interesting because I'm not like a party or anything, but you have your like party friends where things are kind of stagnant and, you don't really talk about deep, meaningful things, but they're fun to go out with, and it's nice to be social. I think it's super important. And I think that you pull all of those in, and it's important to surround yourself with people that I think are driven.
You just talked about curly fries. You don't know it, but you did.
Not the curly
Harvard effect.
Oh, because of curly fries. Like,
literally curly fries.
I'm still kind of cloudy on the whole curly fries.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you're talking about, like, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. Maybe not even like-minded people, but driven people.
Right.
Passionate people. People that are smarter than you. And better at things that you want to be better at.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. That will really, I think, help and propel just opportunities to take change. Opportunities to kind of break from that settled, stagnant lifestyle that we often just slip easily right back into.
Your parents, we all have different, I hope someone has a, parental role and that have lived through this before. They know what it's like to be 20 years old. They know what it's like to deal with all of this stuff. Yeah. So I turn to my parents a lot for career advice, for relationship advice, for how to open a can. I ask them a lot, and I think that they have a lot of wisdom to share, and I think if people in our generation were more open, we'd be learning a lot more.
Yeah, that's very true.
And that's just humility, which is, again, a character trait that you have to cultivate in your life, which I think in your early 20s, you kind of think you don't need that, and then I think you hit that failure, that mistake, and you're like, okay, I have to go to someone, that parental unit, or that really close friend that is an encourager and someone that actually loves you and is willing to have those hard conversations with you. So, yeah.
I think it's someone where you could admit your true mistakes, too.
Which I don't know if people have that person enough in their lives.
I feel like they
not that
don't
you need, like,
anymore.
12 of them, but
that's what I'm saying. I think it's 12 party friends and not one lifer.
One key from this is if you're struggling with fear of failure, change, or mistake, do you have that not that your strength comes from that person or even like your guidance comes from that person, but just someone there that's going to be able to like encourage you, direct you in a good way.
Right.
And it's also just kind of walk through that time with you as well. There's been so many times, not with you, so many times with people where I'm like, this is a decision I would make, but I withhold that, and just encourage them, ask them questions, leading questions.
Yeah.
But you kind of stand there with them. You're not trying to make that decision for you.
Exactly.
But yeah, because I do think they need to have that like personal time, that growth where they're learning how to process all that and make a good decision.
In general, 20-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds, everyone in your 20s, I think that you all need to give yourself some credit and give yourself some time, because we have time. And I think, nothing worth having is achieved easily. 30s are coming. We'll talk about that later, but like this is the time to change and to morph into something great at the end. Yeah. And I think everyone does. And have fun along the way, because it is fun. We're young, we're pretty-ish. Go out.
I feel good.
No, I think that's a key point to make, like whether you're avoiding change or sticking in your settled, comfortable place or just basking over a mistake that you made. Like there's always there's gonna be a tomorrow,
right?
And just to make that change as soon as you can. Don't let my son to make that change, just to make that change, just to make that to make that change, to make to make that change as soon as you can. Don't let my son
I am for sure that change. for watching the third episode in our 7-part series. I'm Gianna.
I'm Lacey.
And I'm Selena.
Oh my god. And when we were like looking for people in the ages, like before we even got to 22, Gianna was like, 24, I know who I'm getting. And then she told me about you, and I was like, who is this angel?
I think your exact words were, Gianna, is that Selena Gomez? You don't know her.
There's always opportunity to just always remember there's always time to make that change into
I can't even get through it now.
there's always opportunity to change who you are and to become a better person. You know, there's always that.
Because we have time.
We were so much. I know.